Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Phyllis Summers no way intended to come an unseen substantiation to a moment that could shatter Genoa City ever, but fate has a way of pulling her into the most dangerous corners of power and deception, and on this particular night, hidden just beyond the shadowed edge of Kane Ashby's office, she hears every single word that will change the game. The structure is quiet, the hum of distant business muffled by thick glass and precious silence, and Phyllis pauses only because commodity in Kane's voice, downward, cropped, murderous, sets off every alarm she has left. She presses herself near to the wall, heart pounding, breath shoal, instinct screaming that this isn't just another commercial initiative or backroom deal. Outside, Billy Abbott stands stiffly across from Kane, trying to mask the pressure crawling up his chine, and when Kane eventually speaks the words that make Phyllis's blood run cold wave, there's no mistaking the meaning. This isn't sabotage. This isn't blackmail. This is murder. Kane lays it out with intimidating calm, framing it as necessity, ineluctability, indeed fortune, telling Billy that a certain problem, one that threatens to expose everything Kane has been erecting toward, must be excluded permanently. Billy tries to laugh it off at first, tossing out a front like a guard, but Kane doesn't blink, doesn't smile, doesn't soften. He leans forward, eyes dark, and tells Billy that this isn't a request and it isn't a barranca. Someone has to die, and Billy Abbott is the one he's chosen to make it be. From her caching place, Phyllis clamps a hand over her mouth as the verity slams into her. Kane isn't just playing power games with Newman, Abbott, or Chancellor. He's crossed into commodity unrecoverable, and he's dragging Billy with him. Billy demurs, pacing now, arguing that there are other ways, that pitfalls can be annulled, that influence exists, but Kane cuts him off sprucely, reminding him of every mistake Billy has ever made, every reproach, every near collapse that Kane still helped contain. Kane tells him that he owns him, that he has the substantiation, the substantiations, the paper trail that could destroy Billy's children's futures, his family's name, his last shred of credibility. Kane's voice drops indeed lower as he says the name of the target, not loud, not dramatic, just precise, and Phyllis feels her knees nearly give out as she realizes how close this person is to everything she's been fighting for. The counter-accusations helical incontinently in her mind, alliances shattered, blood revealed, lives ruined beyond form. Billy's face rains bouts of color, his bravado collapsing as he realizes Kane is serious, deadly serious, and when Billy eventually asks what happens if he refuses, Kane doesn't vacillate. He says turn down isn't an option, because if Billy wouldn't do it, Kane will make sure someone differently does, and Billy will take the fall. The room goes silent after that, the weight of the trouble hanging heavy, and Phyllis feels a swell of fury so violent it nearly drowns out her fear. She wants to burst into the room, to scream, to expose Kane right there, but instinct stops her. Phyllis Summers survives by knowing when to strike and when to vanish, and right now, being unseen is her topmost armament. Outside, Billy runs a hand through his hair, twisting, murmuring that this is insane, that Kane has lost it, but Kane only straightens, reminding him that power isn't clean and leadership always demands immolation. Kane frames the murder as a woeful necessity. Commodity history will no way trace back to either of them if Billy does exactly as instructed. Phyllis listens as Kane outlines details, timing, position, justification, each word a nail pounded deeper into the pall of anyone who allowed Kane was still playing by the old rules. Her mind races, listing every piece of information, every weakness, every tell in Kane's voice, because she knows this knowledge is both a curse and a loaded gun. Billy eventually stops pacing and looks at Kane with commodity close to horror, asking how he came this person, and Kane's answer is chillingly simple: he came this person the moment he realized mercy is a liability. Phyllis feels sick, but beneath that sickness is commodity sharper, clarity. She understands now that Kane isn't just dangerous, he's regular, and worse, he believes he's justified. When Billy asks for time, Kane grants him a narrow window, making it clear that the timepiece is ticking and failure wouldn't be forgiven. The meeting ends suddenly, Billy storming out, slightly noticing the faint movement in the hallway as Phyllis pulls herself deeper into the murk, her heart hanging to burst as he passes elevation from her. The moment he's gone, Phyllis doesn't move. She waits, counting breaths, until she hears Kane's door click shut, until she knows she's alone again with the Verity she no way wanted. Fear threatens to take over, but Phyllis forces herself to suppose, to plan, to survive. She knows Billy isn't a killer, not at his core, but despair makes people do unbelievable effects, and Kane has finagled the perfect trap. However, she risks driving the veritably murder she wants to help. If Phyllis exposes Kane too quickly, however, someone could die, if she stays silent. The weight of the choice presses down on her as she slips still down, formally mapping out her coming moves, formally considering who she can trust, if anyone. By the time she reaches the elevator, her fear has hardened into resoluteness. Phyllis Summers has heard everything, and Kane Ashby has just made the biggest mistake of his life, because she'll not let Billy come a killer, she'll not let Genoa City drown in blood, and she'll not go down without taking Kane with her. Nearly in the megacity, Billy gapes into the night, visited by Kane's command, while Kane himself remains confident, ignorant that his deadliest secret is formerly alive, breathing, and conniving. And as Phyllis steps out into the cold night air, the war lines are drawn, not just between pots or families, but between life and death, and this time, the cost of losing will be measured in bodies, not captions. The night doesn't loosen its grip on Genoa City after Phyllis Summers slips out of that structure, rather, it tightens, curling around every streetlight and shadow as if the megacity itself senses the blood-soaked decision swimming just out of reach. Phyllis walks presto, heels striking the pavement with purpose, but inside her head everything is screaming, Billy's face, pale and shaken, Kane's voice, disturbingly steady, the name of the intended victim echoing like a death judgment she can't unhear. By the time she reaches her auto, her hands are pulsing, not from fear alone, but from rage, because Kane Ashby didn't just cross a line, he cancelled it, and he did so with the trim certainty of a man who believes no bone is watching. Phyllis sits behind the wheel without starting the machine, forcing herself to breathe, to suppose 10 moves ahead, because replying emotionally is how people end up dead or framed, and she refuses to be moreover. She knows Kane's topmost weakness has always been his belief that he's the smartest person in the room, that he's unnoticeable when he operates in the dark, and now, thanks to one impeccably timed pause outside a door, Phyllis holds the one thing Kane no way planned for Verity. Meanwhile, Billy Abbott staggers through the night like a man formerly half buried, his mind replaying Kane's words on a vicious circle, every step heavier than the last as he tries to move himself. There has to be another way. He tells himself he wouldn't do it, that he can't, that he's not that Joe, but Kane's pitfalls slide through his resoluteness, belting around images of his kiddies, his family, the fragile stability he's slightly managed to rebuild. Billy knows what Genoa City does to men who say no to people like Kane. They do'n't just lose everything, they come exemplary tales. At the same time, Kane returns to his office, composed, regular, pouring himself a drink as if he's just closed a routine business deal rather than doomed someone to death. He doesn't know Phyllis was there, doesn't sense the shift in the air, and that ignorance makes him dangerous, because confidence sharpens his atrocity. Kane starts making quiet calls, planting seeds, setting up contingencies, formally preparing the narrative that will follow the woeful accident or unfortunate incident he's convinced is ineluctable. Across city, Phyllis eventually starts her auto, the machine's low scowl matching the fire in her casket, and she begins reaching out, not recklessly, not emotionally, but surgically, testing alliances, probing for cracks, importing who can handle a Verity this net without crumping it precociously. She considers going straight to Jack, also stops herself. Jack would go nuclear, and nuclear gets people killed. She considers Victor, also scoffs, knowing Kane is formerly dancing on the edges of Newman chaos and Victor would use this information like an armament, not a guard. Phyllis needs influence, evidence, and time is the one thing Kane has made sorrowfully scarce. As dawn creeps closer, Billy doesn't sleep. He sits alone, gaping at nothing, replaying every mistake that led him then, wondering how he came upon in someone differently's death want. His phone buzzes with a communication from Kane, suddenly, cold, reminding him the timepiece is ticking and Billy feels the walls closing in. He thinks about confessing to someone, anyone, but sweat clamps down hard, because Kane's trouble wasn't empty, and Billy knows it. Back in her own space, Phyllis lays everything out on the table, literally and figuratively, scribbling names, timelines, motives, mapping Kane's web until a pattern emerges that makes her stomach twist. This murder charge isn't just about silencing one person, it's about transferring a communication, consolidating power through terror. Kane wants to be untouchable, and killing someone through Billy would bind them together in collective destruction. Phyllis realizes also that saving the intended victim isn't enough. She has to break Kane's hold over Billy fully, or this agony will simply change into commodity worse. As the day unfolds, pressures ripple through Genoa City, subtle but sharp, as if people can feel commodity coming indeed if they don't know what it is. Billy avoids familiar places, avoids familiar faces, hysterical. Someone might see the verity written all over him. Kane, on the other hand, moves through meetings with creepy calm, his confidence radiating, formerly picturing the fate where obstacles evaporate and his influence expands unbounded. Phyllis watches from a distance, gathering intel, interdicting whispers, and when she eventually confirms Kane has set the final pieces in stir, position locked, justification established, she knows the window to act is closing presto. She arranges a chance encounter with Billy, catching him off guard, and the look in his eyes when he sees her tells her everything. He's drowning. Their discussion is careful at first, concentrated with subtext and half-trueness, but Phyllis pushes just enough, lets just enough of her knowledge slip, and Billy freezes. He knows also he's not alone, and that consummation nearly breaks him. Phyllis doesn't say everything, not yet, but she says enough to make it clear she knows what Kane has asked of him, and that she's not going to let it be. Billy's response is raw, unpredictable, a blend of relief and terror, because if Phyllis knows, Kane could know she knows, and that makes everything indeed more dangerous. Phyllis tells him to trust her, to stall Kane, to do nothing without telling her first, and when Billy asks how she plans to stop a man like Kane, her answer is chillingly confident by letting him suppose he's formerly won. As night falls again, the megacity holds its breath. Kane delays for evidence, convinced Billy will fall in line, because everyone always does ultimately. Billy detainments, feeding Kane defenses, buying twinkles that feel like hours, while Phyllis sets her trap, lining up evidence, substantiations, and one impeccably timed reveal that will make it insolvable for Kane to spin his way out. The peril harpoons when Kane senses vacillation, his tones dropping, his tolerance thinning, and Phyllis realizes they're seconds from disaster. In a final, hopeless move, she steps directly into the line of fire, defying Kane in a way he no way expects, intimating that his secret isn't as secret as he thinks. For the first time, Kane's countenance cracks, just slightly, but enough for Phyllis to see the fear under. He threatens her, of course, warns her she's playing with forces she can't control, but Phyllis smiles, because that fear tells her she's right where she needs to be. As the night spirals toward its breaking point, Billy stands on the edge of an unrecoverable act. Kane watches his conglomerate teeter, and Phyllis prepares to crump the verity that could save a life, or bring her everything. Genoa City has seen dishonors, backstabbings, and power plays ahead, but this is different. This is a reckoning, and when the sun rises again, someone's reign will be over, someone's soul will be spared, and the fallout will leave scars that no quantum of plutocrat or influence can abolish. The third night descends on Genoa City like a held breath, eventually turning into a suffocating weight, and every move from this point forward feels unrecoverable, especially to Phyllis Summers, who has deposited herself directly in the path of a man who now knows, really knows, that his secret is no longer sealed. Kane Ashby's eyes loiter on her longer than necessary after their tense exchange, his mind easily contending through contingencies, calculating whether she's bluffing or whether the walls are authentically starting to close in, and Phyllis can nearly hear the gears grinding as he reassesses her value not as a supporter, not as a nuisance, but as a liability that might need to be excluded just like the original target. She keeps her expression light, nearly amused, because fear is blood in the water, and Kane is a wolf, but inside she's listing every micro-reaction, every flicker of query that proves he didn't plan for her presence in this agony. The moment she leaves him, Phyllis doesn't slow down, doesn't alternate conjecture herself, because vacillation is how Kane regains control, and control is the one thing she cannot let him reclaim. Across city, Billy Abbott is unraveling at the seams, his phone wobbling again with Kane's decreasingly sharp dispatches, each one tensing the mesh, each one reminding him that the deadline is approaching presto. Billy paces, runs his hands through his hair, gapes at prints of his kitties like they're lifelines, torn between the horror of committing murder and the terror of losing everything he loves if he refuses. The irony is cruel. Billy has survived dishonors that would have destroyed other men, but this time the trouble isn't public demotion or fiscal ruin, it's blood on his hands, a stain no redemption vow could ever completely abolish. Meanwhile, Kane grows restless, his calm veneer cracking as Billy's detainments mount up, and that restlessness makes him dangerous. He starts conforming the plan on the cover, making calls that Phyllis doesn't hear but feels in the unforeseen shifts around city, the wrong people showing up in the wrong places, familiar faces acting just a little too conservative, as if the megacity itself is being still punched toward a single disastrous moment. Phyllis senses the acceleration and realizes Kane may be preparing a backup cutthroat, someone indeed less equivocal than Billy, which means time has officially run out. She moves presto, faster than she has in times, pulling together the final pieces of evidence she needs: timestamps, recordings, fiscal trails that connect Kane's influence to a pattern of compulsion and ruin that suddenly looks a lot more like organized crime than commercial maneuvering. Each discovery hardens her resoluteness, because this isn't just about stopping one murder presently, it's about exposing a man who has been weaponizing fear under the guise of leadership. As the designated hour approaches, Billy is summoned to the position Kane specified, and the air there feels wrong incontinently, too quiet, too offered, like a set erected for a tragedy that's formerly been rehearsed. Billy's hands shake as he steps outside, his heart screaming, his heart pounding so loud he's sure someone can hear it, and for an intimidating moment it seems like Kane's plan is going to unfold exactly as designed. But also everything fractures. Phyllis arrives not dramatically, not crying, but with an authority that cuts through the pressure like glass, bringing with her the one thing Kane no way anticipated: substantiations who aren't hysterical presently. She doesn't reveal everything it formerly, she lets it bleed out in ruinous supplements, enough to stop the act, enough to make it insolvable for Kane to do without exposure. Billy freezes, relief crashing into him so hard his knees nearly buckle, while Kane's fury detonates in real time, his voice rising as he realizes the trap has snapped shut around him. He tries to spin it, of course, tries to reframe the situation as misreading, manipulation, indeed treason by Billy, but Phyllis dismantles every argument with surgical perfection, backing each bone with substantiation that leaves no room for interpretation. The battle becomes unpredictable, voices echoing, alliances shifting in seconds, and Kane switches out, criminating Phyllis of ruining everything, of playing idle when she doesn't understand the cost. Phyllis fires back without recoiling, telling him she understands the cost impeccably, that's why she refused to pay it in someone differently's blood. The moment tips when Kane realizes the verity isn't just contained in that room, it's formerly in stir, formerly beyond his control, and for the first time since this agony began, he looks authentically cornered. Security arrives. Phones buzz. The ripple spreads. Billy is steered down, shaken but alive, the weight lifting just enough for him to breathe again, while Kane is forced to defy the reality that his power has limits and that Phyllis Summers just set up them. The fate is brutal and immediate. Genoa City explodes with enterprise as fractions of the story leak, and while the full verity isn't public yet, enough whispers circulate to permanently blemish Kane's image. Abettors part themselves. Deals cube. Doors that formerly swung open for him now near still but forcefully. Billy retreats from the limelight, scuffling with the emotional fallout of how near he came to crossing a line he can no way forget, knowing that indeed survival comes with scars. Phyllis watches it all with a complicated blend of triumph and prostration, completely apprehensive that saving a life doesn't come without consequences, especially when the man she exposed is as vengeful as Kane Ashby. She knows retribution is coming in some form, legal, professional, or particular, but she also knows commodity differently. Just as important, Kane undervalued her, and that mistake bring him everything.